In this video, we're going to analyze the last movement of Opus 5, number 2, the second sonata that Beethoven wrote for cello and piano in 1796. So it's an important work, and the two that were written as Opus 5 and the treatment of the cello and the piano as being equals. And so you'll see that especially in the last movement of Opus 5, number 2, which we're going to analyze as an example of 7-part rondo. So there are some things that I want you to keep in mind as you start to analyze rondo movements. One of the most important is to wait until you get to the key that you're expecting before you label the B theme. So it's not unusual for a composer to write material that connects the themes in a rondo movement, write material in a transition that would have new thematic ideas. And so that's what we're going to see in this work, and you'll see this many times. And so the two basic ideas are that, the transition would have new material, or the transition can continue the previous, idea and modulate. And so, but the thing that you're waiting for is the arrival of that second key area. And then after it cadences, that's the point at which then you identify the B theme. So, that is one thing, that's a general principle. And then another general idea is that you want to compare the way that returning themes are treated by the composer. So in general, you'll look for the return of themes to be embellished, or somehow changed a little bit. You won't typically have an exact repetition of things. So that's something that you want to carefully analyze the way that the theme is initially presented, and then compare each of the subsequent returns to that initial presentation. So you also want to think in terms of the phrase construction and then what song form that would yield. So in this last movement, what we're going to see is that the A theme, the rondo theme, is presented straight away, and that's the typical situation in a rondo, that you don't have an introduction. And as we listen to it, I want you to then make note of the relationship of each of the phrases. And then we'll talk about then, all right, what then is the song form that is used by Beethoven in this particular A theme. So then when that theme comes back each time, and we're going to see that this is, as I mentioned, an example of a 7-part rondo, and one which doesn't have the a development section for the middle section. Instead, it has its own new themes, and it's based in the key of subdominant key, so it's in C major, but the overall key of this movement is G major. And one other thing that we'll see in this is that that is the longest section in the movement. That and the coda. This also has a very long coda section. And one of the things we're going to hear in the coda section is that Beethoven gives a complete restatement of the opening A theme, although it's embellished so much. You hear the harmonic progression, and you'll hear it, because you've heard it so many times, before you get to the coda. But at any rate, you hear a complete restatement of those 16 measures in the coda. The coda section also is something which, with Beethoven, can be quite extended. It can very often function as a second development. That's always something you want to consider, especially in these longest 7-part or sonata rondo movements. So you're looking to see about, how it does or doesn't stay in one key, tonic key. And so we'll look at that in this work. But if you will, go to the tab that has the score for this, and we are going to listen to it, and I will just be stopping it to talk about the way that the structure is organized. It's not a bad idea if you go ahead and listen to it yourself and just try to, at least the first time you hear it, and this is probably work you don't know, but the opening theme is easy to recognize when it comes back. And so if you can identify all of those spots where it returns, then that's always the first thing that you do when you hear a work, is you listen for the return of the opening theme. And it's not a bad idea that, always listen with a score so you can see exactly what's happening. But if you want to try and do that, this will be good practice for you, because this is going to be similar to the works that I give you for the worksheets that you'll be turning in. There'll be 4 of those movements, and so they'll be like this. I'm also going to go through one movement of a Mozart rondo before I give you the worksheets, but yeah, we'll get some basic techniques in mind as far as things to listen for. All right, so the phrasing of this is in 4 measure phrases, and what we're going to hear is the piano begins with a statement of the rondo theme, and so the cello doesn't have anything until we get to the 4th phrase of this opening theme, and then it cadences real clearly with an authentic cadence, perfect authentic cadence on the downbeat of measure 16. All right, so as you listen to it, just kind of write down the small case letter names for each of the phrases, and then we'll talk about how that is organized into one of the song forms. Okay, so that was the first phrase. Very fast tempo. This is a recording of Rostropovich, the great Russian cellist and Russian pianist Sviatoslav Richter, and tremendous legendary performance of it. But you heard a half cadence at the end of that first phrase, and now the second phrase is parallel, so you're going to have A prime, okay, and so the third phrase then shifts for a moment, goes to a little semi-phrase in the key of E minor, and then that sequence down step on dominant key of E major, and then the cello is going to come in and present the final phrase. So here is the third phrase that is something that is contrasting. So this would be small case B. Fourth phrase. Okay, and so that's the A theme. So you have this construction of A prime, B, A prime. So this was a half cadence, the end of the first phrase, authentic cadence. This cadence on the dominant key, so a half cadence, but it had E minor, which was the relative minor, the submediate key. And then this, where the cello comes in for that fourth phrase, is a restatement of the second phrase. So that equals simply a three-part song form. All right, so let's just go back and listen to this whole theme one more time and get a feel for the way this hangs together. So that's the A theme. You're listening for that to return in time, every time it comes back. All right, now at this point, you hear a new thematic idea that is presented in the cello. And you're going to hear a lot of back and forth between the cello and the piano. So even though it's a new thematic idea, you don't want to label this as the B theme because you haven't gotten to the key that you expect yet. So the key you're expecting it to get to is the dominant key of D major. So let's listen to this, and I'm going to stop it right at the point that we get to the B theme. What's the second phrase? Third phrase? Finally arrived in D major, and you hear the prefiguring of that theme. And so that term, you'll use that when the composer anticipates the theme, but he anticipates the beginning of the theme, but doesn't give you the whole theme. So it's just in that measure 32, where the piano is just sounding the A and then the G sharp A. So bum 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 do dee do dee do dee dee. And then the B theme itself starts at 33. So let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got here a double period. And you're looking at the beginning of each of these phrases to kind of get an idea for how this all works. And this, you would say, would be a contrasting double period, so it's a two-part song form. So I stopped right there where it says dolce, there in measure 33, and the piano is going to present then this lyrical B theme. And what we're going to hear at this point is that it's going to alternate back and forth between the piano stating an idea and then the cello. And so you have this, this chamber music, ideal situation where you have this conversation among equals. So the second phrase, you hear a little trill idea in the piano, and then at measure 41, the cello restates the theme that you heard initially in the piano at 33. And you have then both phrases that are restated, and then there's an extra phrase in this. So you have 5 phrases in this, and so this is a period group, and this is one that leads to a key change at measure 52. So at measure 52, what you're going to hear is that it all of a sudden shifts to D minor. And that is going to be a section that will link you back to the first return of the A theme at measure 66. And what happens at measure 66, one thing about the construction harmonically of the A theme is that it starts on a 4 chord. So it's yum, bum, bum, that's a 4 chord, and then 5, and then 1 on the downbeat of the second measure. So you're always listening for the return of that subdominant harmony that marks the return of the theme. You'll hear it real clearly. I'll stop it when we get there. But what I want to do now is just play through the B theme, and then I'll call out, you'll hear that key change to D minor when the retransition begins. And one of the things that you'll always look for when you're looking at a big sonata rondo or 7-part rondo is, so you've got this, and you have transition. Is to see if this retransition here that connects the return of B, if this is similar to the initial transition that connected. More often than not, it will be. It will be the same material that comes back there. So but that's something to check. And so this was 4 phrases for the A theme, 4 phrases for the B theme, 5 phrases, or 4 phrases for the transition theme, 5 phrases for the B theme, and then we're going to hear that retransition where it shifts to D minor. So you have this, and right here at this point, it shifts to D minor, and then it's going to bring back the A theme. All right, so let's pick it up here at the B theme. Second phrase, half gates. Third phrase, cello restates. Fourth phrase, good cadence right there, an extra phrase. Here's where it shifts to D minor, right? Second phrase. Third phrase. Fourth phrase. There's the return. So all of the sections are basically, the same length. They're either 4 or 5 phrases in length. And we're going to look to see if this also might be something that he uses again. So what we're going to do here, you're expecting, of course, the B theme to come back, to be recapped in tonic. And so we're going to look to see if this then, does it shift to G minor for a final retransition to that last statement of A. And it does, but that's a place, that you expect that to be consistent. You want to be consistent in the way that you analyze returning material. That's one general thing when I grade your tests. I always look to see if material that's presented at the beginning, see how you analyze it, and then I'll compare it to the way that comes back at the end to see if you're consistent or not in the way that you look at it. So, what we're going to see is, this is going to be a return, and we're going to hear all 4 phrases come back, so the incipient 3-part song form is still intact. And then we're going to have a transitional passage that is going to link between that first return of A and then this C theme that is going to be in the key of C major. This transition here is going to be in 2 sections. The first section is going to be one which is imitative. A general thing that you should always do is to point out polyphonic writing in